Silence settled heavily over the small veterinary clinic. The kind of silence that arrives only after years of noise, laughter, and relentless dedication suddenly begin to fade. For decades, cameras had followed the controlled chaos of rural veterinary medicine. Barn calls in freezing mornings, urgent surgeries under bright lights, and the steady, reassuring presence of a veterinarian whose calm voice rarely trembled. To millions of viewers, Dr. Brenda represented something rare: quiet competence, compassion under pressure, and unwavering devotion to animals that could not speak for themselves. But behind the steady professionalism that audiences saw on television, another story had always existed, one written not in broadcast episodes, but in exhaustion, private struggles, and emotional burdens that rarely reached the screen. The world watched her working beside the famous veterinarian who built the clinic's legacy. They saw determination. They saw resilience. They saw a woman who appeared unbreakable. What they did not see were the quiet costs of that life. Because long before the cameras arrived, and long after they stopped rolling, the pressures of responsibility, sacrifice, and personal hardship had already begun shaping a far more complicated reality. And somewhere beneath the calm exterior that viewers trusted so deeply, a difficult question quietly waited to surface. How much silent pain can a person carry before even the strongest resolve begins to fracture? Morning arrives slowly over the farmland of rural Michigan. A pale gray light stretches across the fields, touching barns, fences, and long dirt roads that disappear into the distance. Inside the clinic made famous by the series The Incredible Dr. Pol, another day begins before the sun fully rises. Phones ring early. Farmers speak with urgency in their voices. Animals wait in trailers outside the building, some restless, some frightened, some dangerously ill. Within this familiar rhythm moves Dr. Brenda Grettenberger, her posture calm, her focus unwavering, her hands moving with the quiet confidence of someone who has spent years navigating emergencies that allow no hesitation. To the millions who watched the program, she appeared steady and unshakable. Cameras often captured her during tense moments, delivering difficult diagnoses, assisting in demanding procedures, or calmly explaining treatment plans to anxious owners. In those scenes, she rarely raised her voice or displayed dramatic emotion. Instead, her composure created an atmosphere of trust. But composure can also be a form of protection. Veterinary medicine, especially in rural communities, demands a unique form of emotional endurance. Animals arrive not as anonymous patients, but as companions, livelihoods, and family members. Every outcome carries weight. Every decision carries consequences. For Dr. Brenda, those consequences accumulated quietly over years. There were long nights when emergencies arrived without warning, dragging exhausted staff back into the clinic long after they should have gone home. There were cold winter mornings when barn calls meant navigating icy roads to reach animals whose survival depended on immediate care. And there were moments that never appeared on television at all. The quiet grief that followed cases where nothing more could be done. The cameras rarely lingered on those moments. Television framed the work as compelling, dramatic, even inspiring. And in many ways it was. But what viewers saw were fragments, carefully edited windows into a profession that carried far more emotional complexity than any single episode could reveal. As the show's popularity expanded, the clinic itself changed. Visitors arrived hoping to glimpse the veterinarians they had come to admire. Recognition followed Dr. Brenda in grocery stores, restaurants, and quiet streets where she had once moved anonymously. Fame introduced a subtle transformation. Professional dedication gradually intertwined with public identity. The woman who once focused entirely on medicine now carried the expectations of an audience that believed they knew her. Yet inside the clinic, the work never slowed. Animals continued to arrive. Emergencies continued to unfold. The relentless pace of rural veterinary medicine refused to adjust itself to television schedules or public curiosity. Dr. Brenda remained what she had always been: focused, reliable, disciplined. But somewhere beneath the practice composure, the accumulation of responsibility began pressing more heavily against the edges of endurance. The weight was not dramatic or sudden. It was quiet, gradual, almost invisible, until the question that had lingered silently for years began to surface with increasing urgency. How long can anyone carry the emotional cost of compassion before something within them finally demands relief? Long before audiences recognized her presence on television, the life of Dr. Brenda Grettenberger had already been shaped by a deep and unwavering relationship with animals. In childhood, animals often represent curiosity or companionship. But for some individuals, that connection becomes something far more defining. It becomes a responsibility, a calling that quietly shapes identity long before adulthood arrives. For Brenda, that calling never faded. The path toward veterinary medicine demanded years of rigorous preparation. University classrooms filled with dense textbooks, late-night study sessions under fluorescent lights, and clinical rotations where theory collided with the unpredictable reality of living patients. Veterinary school is not simply an academic challenge. It is an emotional initiation. Students must learn to diagnose suffering, make rapid decisions, and sometimes confront the painful truth that not every life can be saved. Those lessons arrive slowly, but leave permanent marks on the individuals who endure them. Many discover during those years that compassion alone is not enough. The profession requires resilience, an ability to stand in the presence of pain without allowing it to dismantle the clarity required for treatment. Brenda developed that resilience gradually. Each case strengthened her medical instincts while also deepening her understanding of the emotional responsibilities that accompany the profession. A veterinarian does not only treat animals. They also support the people who love and depend on them. By the time her career eventually intersected with the clinic run by Dr. Jan Pol, she had already forged a reputation for disciplined professionalism. The clinic itself represented a demanding environment. Rural veterinary medicine rarely follows predictable schedules. Emergencies arrive at inconvenient hours. Animals require treatment in unpredictable conditions, and a relationship between veterinarian and community often extends far beyond medical care. Yet Brenda adapted to the rhythm. Her approach was methodical, focused, and deeply committed to the animals entrusted to her care. Colleagues recognized her reliability. Clients recognized her calm presence during stressful moments. For years, the work unfolded quietly. Then the cameras arrived. Television transformed the clinic into a stage that reached audiences far beyond the surrounding farmland. Suddenly, daily veterinary work became a narrative watched by millions. For Brenda, the transformation was subtle but undeniable. The same procedures, the same responsibilities, the same long hours continued, but now they existed beneath the constant awareness that every action might be recorded, edited, and broadcast to the world. The profession she had chosen for its quiet dedication was becoming something else entirely, and the life she had carefully constructed through years of discipline was about to expand into a public identity she had never truly planned to carry. When the incredible Dr. Pol began reaching international audiences, few could have predicted the scale of its success. What started as a documentary glimpse into rural veterinary practice gradually evolved into a global television phenomenon. Viewers from distant cities and countries found themselves captivated by the unpredictable world of farm calls, emergency treatments, and the deep bond between veterinarians and the animals they served. Within that world, Dr. Brenda Grettenberger emerged as a quietly powerful presence. Unlike television personalities who chase attention, Brenda seemed almost indifferent to it. Her demeanor remained composed, her focus directed entirely toward the medical challenges unfolding in front of her. In a medium often driven by dramatic personalities, her restraint felt unusual. It was precisely that authenticity that resonated with viewers. Audiences sensed that her calm professionalism was not an act. It was simply who she was, a veterinarian committed to her work rather than the spotlight surrounding it. But public recognition rarely respects such boundaries. As the series gained popularity, the clinic became more than a workplace. It It became a destination. Visitors arrived hoping to meet the veterinarians they had watched on screen. Conversations about cases extended beyond exam rooms into interviews, fan encounters, and media attention. For someone whose career had been built on quiet dedication, the transition required adjustment. Brenda continued performing the same demanding tasks she always had, examining animals, assisting with surgeries, traveling to farms during emergencies. But now each moment carried the possibility of public scrutiny. The presence of cameras subtly alters behavior, even when individuals try to ignore them. Every decision might be seen by millions. Every mistake might be remembered indefinitely. Even ordinary moments acquire new weight when they exist within a permanent public record. Yet the animals arriving at the clinic knew nothing about television. They arrived injured, frightened, or sick, demanding immediate attention regardless of filming schedules. Farmers waited anxiously for answers. Calves struggled to breathe. Horses trembled with infection or injury. The work remained urgent, and Brenda remained focused. But beneath that steady focus, the invisible pressures of visibility began accumulating. The expectation that she would always remain calm, always competent, always composed became another layer of responsibility layered atop the already demanding profession of veterinary medicine. To viewers, she appeared unwavering. To colleagues, she remained reliable. But internally, the growing intersection between private identity and public persona raised questions that could not easily be answered. What happens when dedication to a profession becomes intertwined with an audience that expect perfection? And how long can anyone maintain the image of unbreakable strength before the quiet strain begins to surface? Compassion lies at the heart of veterinary medicine. It is the force that draws individuals toward the profession, the instinct to protect vulnerable lives that cannot speak for themselves. Yet compassion carries a hidden cost that becomes visible only after years spent confronting suffering. For Dr. Brenda Grettenberger, that cost accumulated slowly across countless cases. Some animals arrived with injuries that could be treated successfully. Those moments brought relief, even quiet satisfaction. But others arrived too late, diseases too advanced, injuries too severe, or circumstances too complicated for recovery. Those cases lingered. Television rarely captured the emotional aftermath that followed difficult outcomes. Cameras documented treatment, conversation, and resolution. What they did not record were the moments that came afterward, the quiet silence of a treatment room once a case ended in loss. Veterinarians carry those moments with them. Each decision to end suffering, each conversation with grieving owners, each memory of an animal that could not be saved leaves an imprint that accumulates over time. The phenomenon has a name within the profession: compassion fatigue. It has not arrived dramatically. Instead, it emerges gradually through years of emotional exposure to pain and loss. The ability to remain empathetic while protecting one's own psychological stability becomes an ongoing balancing act. Brenda continued performing her work with disciplined professionalism. But internally, the emotional toll of decades within the field began raising quiet questions. The long hours, the unpredictable emergencies, the constant need to maintain composure. Each element contributed to a growing sense of exhaustion that could not easily be dismissed. Still, the work continued. Animals continued arriving. Responsibilities continued demanding attention. And the expectation that she would remain calm, reliable, and strong remained unchanged. Yet somewhere beneath the steady routine, a realization was beginning to take shape, one that many professionals eventually confront when passion collides with personal endurance. Perhaps dedication alone was no longer enough. And perhaps the life she had built through tireless service was approaching a moment when something had to change. Change rarely announces itself with certainty. Instead, it arrives through small realizations, moments of reflection that accumulate quietly until the path forward no longer feels as inevitable as it once did. For Dr. Brenda Grettenberger, Those moments began emerging after years spent balancing the demanding realities of veterinary medicine with the growing public visibility created by the incredible Dr. Pol. The routine remained familiar. Morning calls from farmers, emergency visits to barns, long hours inside the clinic assisting with procedures and diagnoses. Yet beneath the routine, personal priorities were gradually shifting. Years of dedication had shaped Brenda's identity around service. Service to animals, to the community, and to the profession she respected deeply. But even the strongest sense of purpose must eventually confront the limits of personal endurance. The emotional demands of veterinary medicine do not disappear with experience. If anything, they grow heavier as the years pass and memories accumulate. Every case treated becomes part of a larger history carried quietly within the veterinarian who performed the work. For Brenda, the decision to step away from the clinic environment represented far more than a career adjustment. It was a confrontation with identity. The place where she had invested years of effort had become inseparable from her public reputation. To leave meant stepping away not only from the daily work, but also from the familiar structure that had defined her professional life. Such transitions rarely occur without doubt. Questions surfaced. Would the animals still receive the care they deserved? Would the community understand the decision? And perhaps most difficult of all, who would she be without the role that had shaped so much of her life? The answers did not arrive immediately, but the realization continued growing stronger. Sometimes the most responsible decision a person can make is the one that protects their ability to continue living with purpose beyond the work that once defined them. Still, the moment of departure carried emotional weight, because leaving behind a life built through years of dedication always carries a quiet sense of loss. Stories told through television often simplify the lives they portray. Episodes condense months of work into minutes of narrative clarity. Successes appear dramatic, challenges appear temporary, and the individuals involved seem permanently defined by the roles viewers see on screen. But the life of Dr. Brenda Grettenberger extends far beyond any episode of the incredible Dr. Pol. For decades, her career represented something rarely visible within entertainment media: the quiet persistence of service. Veterinary medicine is not glamorous work. It unfolds in muddy barns, dim examination rooms, and unpredictable environments where animals rely entirely on the skill and compassion of those treating them. Brenda's legacy rests within those countless unseen moments. Animals that recovered from illness, farmers who trusted her judgment during emergencies, communities that depended on the clinic's presence when their livelihoods and beloved animals were at risk. Television captured only fragments of that history. Yet those fragments introduced millions of viewers to the reality of rural veterinary medicine and the individuals who dedicate their lives to it. Stepping away from the clinic did not erase those contributions. Instead, it revealed the deeper meaning behind them. A career built on compassion inevitably leaves traces within every life it touches. Animals that survived because someone intervened, families comforted during moments of loss, communities strengthened by the presence of professionals willing to answer calls for help at any hour. Those experiences become part of a legacy that cannot be measured by television ratings or public recognition. And for Brenda, reflection on those years likely carries a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and quiet understanding. Because the true story of her career is not about fame. It is about endurance. The endurance required to remain compassionate within a profession that confronts suffering daily. The endurance required to balance personal life with public expectations. And the endurance required to recognize when it is time to step away from a role that once defined everything. Yet even now, the memory of those years continues echoing through the clinic, through the community she served, and through the episodes that preserve fragments of her work. The cameras may have documented only portions of the journey, but the deeper story remains written within the lives she helped protect. And somewhere within that story, a final reflection lingers quietly, one that extends beyond television and into the meaning of a life devoted to service. Was the world truly watching a television personality, or witnessing the quiet resilience of a veterinarian whose greatest contributions were never meant for the screen?